Hey there. Welcome to the If Money Were Easy podcast, the show where we teach you how to expand what's possible with your money. We're your hosts, Neela Hummel
and Mary Beth Storjean,
certified financial planners and co-CEOs of Abacus Wealth Partners. Today on the show, we're going to talk about the Golden Bachelorette.
Ooh, and I like that you're wearing like this gold-colored top.
Totally by accident. If I'm ever on trend, it's 100% by accident.
I thought it was intentional.
Yeah. I just am not good at fashion.
But you are. I've seen your shopping. I've seen your shopping out, like your haul, the shopping haul of things that you purchased. I think you're good.
Thank you. Yeah. I think I'm mostly like a cartoon and I'm like, ooh, I figured out this shirt that works, so I'm going to buy 12 of them.
Well, yes, that's good. But that's good. I feel like that's good. Maybe my fashion is, maybe we have different fashion from what fashion folks would say.
That's true.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. That's fine. But yeah, based on my standards, which are not qualified or certified in any way, I think you have great fashion.
I'll take it. Thank you.
So back on topic, let's talk. So Golden Bachelorette, what does that mean in general? We could say the golden years. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. I was really excited as we were talking about this topic because it's something that's coming up more and more with a lot of clients and a lot of people in my personal network of people dating later in life. So dating, and I'm just going to, now that we're 40, I feel like we can say like 40 and beyond.
40 and beyond.
But basically.
Are we golden? Are we in the golden?
I don't
We're like golden
know.
Adjacent?
Golden adjacent, right? Okay. Basically, like the idea of dating not like in your 20s, essentially.
Yeah. Because that's a whole different ballgame.
It's a whole different thing. And where it's coming up is it's challenging a lot of the conventional notions of relationships, and especially, where obviously we're very interested is how it impacts money. Mm-hmm. Because you're dating later in life, you are probably in a different financial situation than you were at 21.
Right.
I am, right? But also you might have gone through a divorce. You might have children from a previous relationship. You might have a career that you've worked at for decades. There's so many other nuances that I think come with dating that I think are really important to talk about, especially as it touches our finances.
Right. So you just laid out a variety of kind of starting points, right? Or entry points, I guess, for the dating. You can either be divorced, you have a financial situation, you have children, right. You have a career. You could be, you could have been single, and have like amassed a huge pot of wealth. How does that, just like that different entry points, like how does that impact what you're seeing with clients? Like divorce versus having kids versus like never having been married. What are they considering? What are you seeing people considering? And what are you advising?
I think the big question that comes up is, do the default rules apply? Right? Like if you think about, if you got married at 25, I honestly don't know who does that anymore, but let's just say you got married at 25, right? I mean, who knows? Most people come to a marriage with nothing. They don't have kids from a previous marriage. They don't have any money. They're in the early stages of their careers. And so the concept of blending finances, for example, is a much easier one. You tend to have other issues in terms of like spending philosophies, et cetera, but it's almost easier to create this like household unit earlier on. Where I think it's coming up later is that you're more set in your patterns. You might have had a divorce that either had an impact on you financially and you've had to, adjust your life. Where I see it a lot is people who were maybe not that engaged with their finances before they were divorced are much more in the driver's seat now.
Right.
And so they're much more trepidatious about making mistakes, or they don't want to give up that financial independence, but they also don't really know, how are you supposed to do it?
Right.
How do you blend finances and relationships when like you've already got your own asset? Like what if you two might have your own houses? How do you begin to kind of share a life together, whether you get married or not, when it just feels like it's a different rule book?
And so with that, how are you advising clients?
So
are you just like, no, don't do it?
Yeah.
End of
Great
episode.
question. I think it's like it's no longer a conversation of should I get married again or should I not?
Right.
It's Right. It's basically like what are the considerations? What should I be thinking about?
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing that I would say is understanding like your goals, understanding your situation, and recognizing like you don't have to rush into doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
That like just because you are in a serious relationship doesn't mean you need to be in the same financial bet with that person.
Right.
Like that's really, really the most important one.
And are you saying that? So this is like outside of marriage. You could be married and still not, marriage puts you in somewhat of the same financial bed, but
Right.
it doesn't mean you need to commingle assets and there are ways to
Right.
navigate it. Or are you saying just because you're in a serious relationship doesn't mean you need to get married and put yourself in
Right.
financial bed? Like which one are you approaching?
I think it's mostly the latter. Like if you want to get married because you want to get married, great. But like we're going to plan a little bit differently around that.
Right.
We're going to really, at that point, we're very much talking about prenups. So I guess if somebody's already thinking about a second marriage or a third marriage, just basically a marriage later in life, we're having a prenuptial agreement conversation immediately because you can still get married, but maybe we want to separate things and you want to go in together on a house, but maybe all of your other assets are separate. And you can dictate how you all want it to go. But of course, when you start talking about a prenuptial agreement, what you're really talking about is we need to have really clear communication with our spouse and make sure that we're able to advocate for what we need. And that's for most people, I don't want to abdicate my financial responsibility and ownership. I don't need to share my assets with you just because I want to share my life with you.
Absolutely. And have you found that clients are more open to that conversation than they may at this point in life than they may be when they're in their 20s? We've talked about prenups on a previous episode, but are you finding that after somebody goes through a divorce or they've amassed, they've accumulated a certain amount of wealth that they're like, yes, this is mine. I have this independence. I am absolutely having this conversation. Like sign me up. Who do we call? Whatnot. Do you find that people are more open to it?
I think people are way more willing to have that conversation because they've seen the other side, right? They might have been depleted from a divorce standpoint. They might have had to hand over assets or they might have had to reduce their standard of living, but they've kind of seen the financial impacts of a divorce. And so they're kind of going in a little bit more cautiously of, if I'm going into a marriage, I also have to kind of envision what the divorce might look like. Right. Not because I want to get divorced or I expect to get divorced, but I need to plan around it just in case. I need to protect myself. I think that the ability to just see through it and say, I just need to protect myself. And I need to know how to lovingly talk about that.
Yeah. And that's empowering, though, to be able to, it might be scary to go there, but I think that's a really empowering way to approach it, to know that you are able to protect yourself and you have a plan in place for how you will be protected. Right. So there's this idea of dependency on somebody else, but that self-accountability, self-reliance is actually a very empowering to know that you will be okay should something happen. And that should hopefully actually set for a smoother, kind of entry into this relationship or next stage because you have that buttoned up.
Right. And, we've obviously talked a lot about boundaries, but this is a perfect time to talk about boundaries. Like, let's just say, for example, that you own your own home and you start dating somebody and you want that person to move in with you. Having the conversation around like, I'm going to continue to pay my mortgage and property tax. Like, this is my home. And you can pay utilities and you can pay when we go out to dinner or something like that, so that you're able to communicate like, this is still mine, but I also know that like you want to be a part of this living arrangement. Like, let's figure out a way that this feels good for both of us. But at the end of the day, like, hey, this is my house. This is in my name. Like, just because somebody's moving in with you, please don't just put them on title.
Right. Please don't.
Please don't. And to your point, I think it has the ability to create a much stronger relationship, because you coming in and saying, hey, I've been through a divorce, right? I've done this and I really don't want to do it again. And I don't expect to with you, but it's important for me that I maintain my financial independence. And what that looks like is that I have my own bank account and that we decide how we're going to handle expenses from the day to day to the more discretionary. And let's figure out a system that works for both of us. But just because you're dating or you're about to get married, that doesn't mean you need to add people to title. Doesn't mean you need to change all your beneficiaries. You don't have to change your entire financial plan because you are looking for love.
Yeah, I love that. Can that should just be a tagline? You don't have to change your entire financial plan because you're
Right?
looking for love.
I like it.
I
I
like
love
it.
that all of our like bumper stickers are actually like bumper paragraphs,
They're
but I
so
guess
great. It's
that's just
fine. It's
that's
fine.
just the issue with being nerds.
Yes. So when we're talking prenup, you don't have to change your entire financial plan, but you do actually have to talk about values. I mean, ideally, you've
Yes.
shared some of the values if you are at this phase of trying to consider marriage or whatnot. In talking about values, how do you approach that? And then how do you advise that clients then approach the money situation? So if it's separate bank accounts, how are they approaching
Yeah.
joint bills? What do you recommend there?
Right. I think it's a great conversation around shared values
Mm-hmm.
and then also separate values. So if we often talk about this like your, mine, and ours
Mm-hmm.
approach. I
Right.
think if you're getting married or you're in a relationship later in life, that should be more of the default versus the exception. And that people should really approach that so that you think about your shared values together. You maybe have a shared account where you pay for certain expenses together from that and you figure out the right way of funding that account. But as far as the separate accounts go, me as an individual, I can keep fulfilling my individual values. If
Right.
I'm very charitably inclined, I'm going to keep doing that out of my own separate account. And like my spouse can't say anything about it because it's mine and it's
Right.
separate. And I don't want to be told what to do. So I think it allows you to say, okay, you want to spoil your niece and nephew? That is awesome. I want that for you. You do that with your money. And I'm going to keep funding my, Planned Parenthood contributions because that's
Right.
super important to me. And then together, we love spending time together. So let's take some great trips together and let's figure out the right way to fund those.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so how do you approach it? I have a variety of questions I think we could talk about. What about those who have young children? What if there's like kids that are being blended families? Both sides are bringing in kids. How are they navigating that from a situation? And
Yeah,
let's not forget, so you're still raising kids. They might not be grown. So you're golden. Well, you can be
right.
golden and still have some, like maybe you have teenagers. You have teenagers. Let's talk about
Yeah.
that. Or you're still paying for college and those things. And you have that. What are we looking at? Because you're also looking at if they are divorced, there's potentially, ex-spouses on the other side.
Ex-spouses, right.
Yeah.
I think it's another thing that can be a challenge is that
Mm-hmm.
there's kind of another person sort of a little bit in the relationship, maybe not really in the relationship, but it's kind of like a key player.
Mm-hmm.
So you're almost navigating tough conversations on two sides. If you are a divorced spouse, and not like say a widowed spouse,
Right.
you're basically navigating certain conversations with your ex while also navigating maybe different conversations with your current spouse.
Mm-hmm.
So the ones with the previous, with your previous spouse, it's okay, how are we paying for college? How are we going to financially support, this child? At what point will we stop supporting
Right.
them? And then, I think it can get tricky if you're not on the same page there, which, oh my God,
Mm-hmm.
shocking that there would be two
Right.
ex-spouses that were
Right.
not in agreement on everything with regards to kids. But things like, not just co-parenting, but the financial commitment of raising children
Mm-hmm.
and who's picking up the slack where,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's where you talked about, step one is just clear communication. I think it
Yeah.
is tricky and it is nuanced and it takes time and you
Yeah.
might not have it. You want to have as much figured out ideally before you're jumping into like a long-term commitment
Right.
in terms of marriage. You also want to make sure in terms of like the separate accounts of what you're keeping for yourself that you
Yeah.
understand what they are paying for their children and
Yeah.
any role or responsibility that you do or do not want in that. Right.
Right.
So depending on how long this relationship has been, just because they're wanting to pay for their child's college tuition doesn't mean that you need to. But if they are paying for their child's college tuition, how does that impact their finances and their ability to contribute to whatever household that you are
Right.
creating, if it's a joint household? And then are you maybe not contributing to the college, but then having to carry more of a household situation because of those other side, those commitments?
Right.
So it gets tricky, and it is important to communicate around that though, and make sure that you're willing and comfortable with that, right? That you
Right.
are understanding if your financial contribution is outsized, why is that?
Yeah.
And do you agree with that reasoning? Is it simply an income differential? Is it commitments? Is it priorities
Yeah.
that you do or don't agree with? And those do factor in, especially at this point in life.
You bet. Yeah, I mean, and honestly, when you think about values too, if you're dating, say after 50, you're probably also having conversations of at some point, we're not going to be able to work and we're going to need to live off of whatever we have. And if you have somebody who has significant more in the way of savings and investments than somebody else, that
Hmm.
can put some pressure on the
Right.
situation, right? Of
Yes.
like, oh, okay, well, am I going to have to take care of you because you were behind maybe in planning, or you went through a really bad divorce and are in rebuilding phase. But thinking about later in life concerns like being able to be work optional, thinking about later in life care and that kind of the financial responsibilities that come with that. Again, those are conversations and they're tricky,
Yeah.
very tricky.
So I'm going to take us a little off, but still on track because I can imagine this will come up for some of our listeners potentially. What if you are the child and your golden bachelor or bachelorette parent is going down this path and you
Mm,
aren't sure the conversations are being had and you're a little bit concerned about where they're going? Like, 'cause I think that does come up quite a bit, right? You don't know,
right.
second marriages, like that's happening. 30s, 40, yeah, parents are in their 60s and 70s and they're wanting to get remarried. We do see
Right.
that a lot. How
Right.
do you handle it as a child in those situations and broaching those topics? Because there's
Oof,
only so much you can control.
absolutely. It's such a good question. And we toss around a lot of psychological terms, but I'm like, talk about a parentification topic
Right.
there of like,
Yeah.
are you going to be okay?
Yeah.
And I hate to be predictable, but I think it's communicating in the best way that you can of like,
Mhm.
my concern is this, or like if you're talking to your mom, it's mom, I'm concerned. I saw what you went through, right? I've kind of been on the receiving end and like, I want to make sure that you're good. Like I'm going to be,
Mhm.
I'm better if you're good. And I want to make sure that like you're talking to the people that you need to be talking to. I think also the number of family law attorneys who will do a free consultation is
Mhm.
like, I don't think I've met one that doesn't do that. And so there's no downside to being like, I just want to make sure that my I's are dotted and my T's are crossed. And
Yeah.
financial planning, like I don't think that we're like not romantic, but we will also take a look at the entire situation and
Right.
say, what I can see is that you have 7x the wealth of your potential spouse.
Hmm.
This is the way that might play out in a community property state. Would you get
Yes.
divorced? Right. And like, honestly, this is how it can impact your relationship on a day-to-day basis if little resentments and little miscommunications or microaggressions, if those kind of add up over time, those can really hurt a relationship. So
Yeah.
really setting a good plan early and communicating often can make for just like a much more rewarding conversation.
Yeah.
It's funny you asked that because I'm generally like several years behind media and I started watching Gossip Girl
Oh.
actually,
Mhm.
which I'd never seen. And like one of the main characters, her mom has like on to her fourth marriage. And in that situation, she's already financially independent and she's marrying somebody who has even more than she does. So I'm like, in that situation, there's not as big of a risk
Right.
because like they're both fine.
Right.
But I think it comes into play even more when there are bigger wealth inequalities,
Yes.
bigger
Involves.
income inequalities. And honestly, like if you've been burned,
Yes.
if you have not had a good experience, like what are the recent stats? Like 42%
42%.
of marriages are going to end in divorce. That's tough. And so like
Yeah.
if you've had a not a great experience, that you're going to kind of bring that with you and you might have
Hmm.
some wounds that need to be discussed and you can say, "Hey, I've been through this and I don't want to do it again."
Right. Absolutely. And so, what else? We talked about beneficiaries. Talk a little bit about that. So,
Yeah.
when you do get married
Yeah.
later on in life, like what are we looking at in terms of an estate plan? What are the
Yeah.
considerations you're thinking in terms of next generation inheritance, kids versus new
Yep.
spouse, their family members, etc.?
So in addition to all of the touchy-feely communication around money systems, I think getting married later in life has three main areas that I want to call people's attention to. There's like the prenup conversation.
Right.
There's estate planning, like you talked about, and there's taxes.
Yep.
So as far as estate planning goes, I think you start seeing a lot more creative estate plans and know that that's okay.
Yep.
So the kind of standard estate plan for like, a married couple with 2 kids, they want to give everything to their kids and they might give some money to charity or to, their ex-cousin who was really supportive during some weird, whatever. It's a little bit more textbook.
Yep.
In second marriages, I've seen a lot more of, hey, me and this spouse are going to be cohabitating in this house. And so I want my spouse to continue to live in that house after I pass. And I want all of my other assets to go to my kids or my siblings or to these charities. And so there's like a carve out, and you have just a little bit more pieces to that estate plan.
Yeah.
Which is like perfectly normal of like, okay, well, I want us to have this and I want them to keep living their life. But I've got 3 kids and I have these causes that I sit on the board of and I want to contribute to those. And so I want to make sure that the money gets distributed there.
Yeah. And that could happen naturally as you get older.
Totally.
You have more carve outs.
I think also a lot of the defaults around beneficiaries in insurance, in retirement plans, all of that need to be looked at, because I've seen more accidental beneficiaries with people getting married, later in life, where it's like their ex-spouse is the beneficiary on a bunch of stuff.
Didn't update that. Yes.
Yeah. Like I don't even talk to this person anymore, and yet they're going to inherit my entire 401k.
Yes.
So taking like a hard look at all your insurance policies and beneficiaries is super important. And again, just because you're getting married doesn't mean that your spouse needs to inherit absolutely everything.
Right.
That doesn't need
Those
to
are all
be
the considerations.
default.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And so let's go to taxes then.
The T word.
The T word.
My favorite T word. So where I really think about this is, when you file, you have 2 options when you're married. You no longer get to file single. Most people are like, oh, we're going to get married, but I'm still going to file single. Like,
can't do that.
Can't do it, right? You have 2 options. You can be married filing jointly and married filing separately. And this is when you need to have a good CPA who's coming along and are running both of those scenarios, and also making sure that tax hygiene is being practiced by both people.
Then what is tax
hygiene?
Mean by that? Yes. Tell us more.
So let's say you have one partner who is really good about making estimated tax payments and another partner who's like, I just wait until I get yelled at and I get all the notices in the mail. Yep. You don't want
that on you.
Misprepare to be paying the price for somebody else who has a different system. And so while it may make sense for you financially to do married filing jointly, if you're not seeing the same, if you don't kind of have the same tax practices and mindset and planning, that can actually create some big headaches. And so sometimes people might opt to do married filing separately just for like emotional peace of mind. Because they're kind of like, I just want to take care of my stuff and you do whatever it is you need to do, but I'm not going to be on the hook there.
Yes. Yes. And that's absolutely okay.
Yeah.
And
totally
sometimes
okay.
And it's worth the differential that you'll pay sometimes just to have that peace of mind. Yeah.
I remember asking my CPA, I got married in November, and I remember asking him like late October.
Like November years ago, by the way.
Many years ago. Yes. 10 years ago in November. And I reached out to my CPA a few weeks before the wedding and was like, how does it look, whether we're married or, non-married?
Yeah.
And he's like, well, you're going to pay more taxes married. Are you going to cancel your wedding? And I was like, no. But I did think about it for a second. I was like, oh, should we at least move it into the next tax year? And then I was like, oh my God, what am I even thinking about? All of the deposits and all that. I was like, you monster. No, just stop. So sometimes.
This is where is Tom just now learning about this by listening to this episode?
Tom knows, where I was like, I don't know, babe, maybe we just like do the ceremony and then we do like the official marriage in January, buy us like a tax year. And then you're like, just stop. Sometimes financial optimization
goes too far.
Goes too far.
Goes too far.
Exactly.
Yes, it's not worth it.
Love you, honey. Love you.
It's a nuanced and tricky situation, which marriage at any point is. And then you add on the complications of like, you just have more life behind you when you are getting married at this age. And so taking time, there's like communication is key, values, and the 3 main components: estate planning, taxes, and what was the last one that I just forgot?
Prenup.
All right.
Prenup, estate planning, and taxes.
Prenup,
basically the three pillars of romance. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah, we are known to the romance here at Abacus. That's a big one.
I do have to say, like, there is an aspect of dating later in life that I think is positively liberating.
I was like, refreshing? Are we going to say refreshing?
Refreshing and liberating. It's like not from personal experience, but personal experience working with so many, particularly women who have gone through this transition of them knowing what they want, knowing what they're willing to tolerate, knowing what their deal breakers are, being in a position where they can financially take care of themselves, and the clarity of just dating for love and none of the other stuff that goes with it can be just so rewarding. And so I've seen this like transformation in so many clients of like, this is exactly like I am in the relationship that I want to be in. And I'm like only in it for the relationship's sake. And I feel more empowered around my choices. I feel more empowered around my money. So I don't fear it, essentially, right? I think there's the concept of gray divorce is a little bit more common.
Right.
Where basically like the the American Psychological Association did a survey that in 1990, about 9% of all divorces were among adults 50 and older. By 2019, so like 30 years later, that percentage had grown to 36%.
Ooh.
So it's just, it's a lot more common of people being like, yeah, we've been married 20, 30 years, but like, I think I think I have another chapter.
We're good. Yeah. I mean, and we see it a lot when empty nest happens, right? That's when the kids are gone, and then there's the time to evaluate.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Anything we missed here?
I think those are the big ones. I think don't be afraid to bring people in on the conversations.
Support system, your financial planner, your CPA, your children, if you do feel like you want to bring them in, but definitely leaning on professionals, a family law attorney, as we mentioned. Make sure you're getting input as you're going down this path.
Absolutely. And if you have people-pleasing tendencies, as you know, many of us sometimes do, that saying no, or that doesn't feel good to me, or that doesn't make sense, might be uncomfortable in the moment, but could be the thing that actually protects your relationship.
Yes.
And it's okay to say like, no, I want to do it differently. This is what works for me.
Saying no now versus the problems that you may encounter later on. That no, you're going to wish that you had said that no, right?
Right. Absolutely.
If that does, happen.
Yep. So I think those are the big ones: clear communication, and then assemble that team. Thank you for joining us for another episode of If Money Were Easy. We hope you're walking away with some fresh insights, maybe some inspiration, and some ideas to apply to your finances, life, etc.
If you're excited about these conversations, we would love for you to follow or subscribe on your favorite podcast platform and YouTube. It's one of the best ways for you to support the show, and that way you will never miss the latest from us.
We're also turning If Money Were Easy into a community, and we'd love your help building support. So leave us a review, share your favorite episode with a friend, and we'd be super grateful.
We are also launching a newsletter. There you will get the episode updates, behind the scenes content, all of the bloopers from Neela and I, and what we are reading, watching, and listening. You will find the sign up link in our profiles.
Please connect with us on Instagram. We're at Mary B. Storage and Neela Hummel CFP.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.